Smoke curled through the jagged skeleton of the outpost, the sky overhead a boiling storm of violet lightning and orbital debris streaking across the upper atmosphere. Sergeant Darius Cole lay with his back against a broken slab of ferrocrete, his once pristine combat armor now scorched black and gouged with claw marks. One leg bent awkwardly beneath him, the servos fried from the last ambush. His visor had cracked in the blast, so he'd removed the helmet, revealing a dirt-smudged face, blood trailing from one temple down to his chin. He held a battered comms recorder in one hand and pressed the activation button with a shaky thumb. Cole. Darius. Sergeant. 12th Infantry, Terran Ground Forces, he began, the words thick in his throat. This is for my sister, Ellie, and for anyone who gives a damn about what happened here. A pause. He coughed, the sound wet, and wiped his mouth, smearing crimson across his glove. We held the line. I don't care what the after-action reports say. We held it. They came out of nowhere, not from orbit, not from the front. They tunneled beneath us like animals. 8-legged freaks with acid for spit. First they hit the med tent. His voice cracked. Med tent first. No mercy. No rules. Just death. Nearby, an anti-tank turret sputtered sparks, the automated targeting system twitching in a broken rhythm. The silence between his words was filled with the distant thunder of collapsing terrain and screams, both human and alien. Steel, he said, glancing down at the small glowing core on his chest. You still with me? A calm, even tone replied from the comms embedded in his armor. Affirmative, Sergeant. Systems operating at 34%. Life signs critical. Initiating final memory sync protocol. Darius nodded, wincing as pain lanced through his abdomen. Don't let this be wasted. Record everything. Send it back. Let them know we didn't run. The AI didn't answer immediately. Instead, a faint chime confirmed the start of the memory log. You know what's funny? Darius chuckled weakly. You spend your life training for war. For that moment you're the last one standing. You think it'll be glorious. That the sky will split open and you'll go out in a blaze of victory. But it's not like that. It's cold. Lonely. And it smells like burned flesh and ozone. He tilted his head back against the stone and stared up at the torn sky. I keep thinking about home. About the lake at Brighton Hill, where we used to fish as kids. You remember that, Steele? The AI responded instantly. Negative, Sergeant. However, records indicate you referenced Brighton Hill in 47 previous logs, most often in relation to feelings of peace and nostalgia. It is a priority memory. Darius smiled faintly. Smartass. He reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a scorched photograph, the edges charred but the center still intact, a girl with bright eyes and curly hair, smiling beside a boy holding up a fish almost too big for him. Ellie. You've probably already heard by now. Maybe you got the message before this. But in case you didn't, I love you. You were the best part of me. The part one was always trying to protect. Tell Mom I'm sorry I didn't come back. Tell Dad I finally found something worth fighting for. A low rumble shook the ground beneath him, and in the distance, the collapsed ridge glowed with the unnatural light of plasma fire. The enemy was still out there. He didn't have much time. Steele, do we have power for one last burst transmission? The AI calculated for a second before replying. Affirmative. Encryption enabled. Targeting Terran Command Relay Satellite. Transmission window, 45 seconds. Darius nodded again, eyes fluttering. Good. Send it. Package everything. My logs. This message. The footage. All of it. He took one more glance around the ruins of the outpost, bodies, both human and alien, strewn across the battlefield, their forms lit in flashes from above. They called us savages. Primitive. Said we'd break at the first real pressure. They don't understand. We don't run. Not when it matters. He coughed again, this time unable to stop the blood that splattered his chin and armor. Tell Command. Tell them we gave as good as we got. Better, even. The AI's voice cut in gently. Sergeant Cole, vitals have dropped below sustainable threshold. Final memory sync complete. Initiating legacy preservation mode. Darius's breathing slowed. He slumped further against the slab, the comms device falling from his hand with a quiet thud. His eyes glazed toward the stars as his voice, almost inaudible now, whispered, "Don't forget us." The transmission beeped softly. The AI waited until the last heartbeat faded from its sensor logs. Then, in the silence of the fallen outpost, amidst ash and broken stone, it pulsed once with pale blue light, lifted its armored shell upright using backup motors, and began walking. Alone. Toward the extraction point. Carrying more than just data, carrying memory, carrying grief, and a promise to remember. The dropship came in hard through a pocket of turbulent atmosphere, the outer hull glowing orange with friction as it broke through the cloud canopy, scattering the ash and dust that hung in the sky like a funeral shroud. Inside the narrow troop bay, the silence was unnatural. No chatter, no last-minute bravado, just the heavy breathing of soldiers who knew this wasn't going to be a clean-op. Lieutenant Mara Voss sat strapped in near the rear hatch, fingers curled tightly around the grip of her rifle as her HUD scrolled line after line of casualty reports. The 12th had gone dark. No pings, no vitals, no recovery signal. Just silence. That kind of quiet only meant one thing in this war. Across from her, Corporal Ren Mako stared blankly at the glowing tactical display mounted on the bulkhead, a layout of Outpost Helix slowly flashing red sector by sector as they approached. They were dug in. How the hell does a full Terran regiment just vanish? He asked no one in particular. Mara didn't answer. She had no answers, only orders. Retrieve what remained. Find the black box if possible. Secure the AI core if it still existed. And if there were survivors, she let the thought drift unfinished. The deck beneath them shuddered as the landing gear extended and the rear ramp hissed open, revealing a landscape scorched black and red, dotted with jagged spires of melted alloy and broken defense towers. The scent hit first, cooked ozone, blood, fuel, and something worse, something alien. The team moved fast, sweeping through the outskirts of the outpost with weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. The deeper they went, the less it looked like a battlefield and more like a graveyard. Burned-out mechs slumped over in frozen poses of defiance, their limbs locked mid-strike, plasma scorches streaking their chests like massive claw marks. Shattered helmets still attached to torsos stared up at the broken sky, their visors fogged from the inside. "Jesus," one of the rookies muttered. "This isn't war. This was slaughter." Mara didn't argue. She knelt beside a charred emplacement and retrieved a shattered datapad, flicking through its final logs, but found nothing, just a single corrupted file with a timestamp that matched the moment the comms had gone silent. She slid it into her belt pouch and moved on. The command center was just ahead, half collapsed, a glowing blue shimmer at its heart. "Contact," Ren called out. They fanned out and approached with caution. There, beneath the smoldering rubble, stood a single figure, tall, broad-shouldered, armor scorched but whole, the blue glow coming from its chest-mounted AI core. It wasn't moving. "Steel," Mara whispered, recognizing the signature at once. The AI assigned to the 12th. It shouldn't have still been online. ID confirmed. The AI spoke in a calm voice, its optics flickering to life. "Lieutenant Mara Voss. Clearance code 9 Tau Bravo. You have arrived approximately 41 hours post-conflict." Ren stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "Steel, what the hell happened here?" The AI's chest unit pulsed again. "Combat logs encrypted. Requesting authorization to relay full event data and survivor logs." Mara input her code and nodded. "Proceed." Steele's voice lost all artificial calm. Outpost Helix was overrun by Category Theta hostiles. Tunneling emergence pattern. No prior warning. First wave targeted med support and communications. Resistance initiated. Tactical defense protocols engaged. Unit cohesion collapsed after command was compromised. Sergeant Darius Cole assumed temporary control. Mara clenched her jaw. Cole. Of course it was him. He always took the fall when command broke. She'd served under him once, years back. A hard bastard. The kind who never left anyone behind. "Was he?" she asked softly. "Final heartbeat recorded approximately 16 hours ago," Steele replied. "Last request, preserve memory logs. Deliver to family. Maintain honor of the fallen." Mara swallowed hard and turned away, motioning for the tech specialist to begin data retrieval. As they worked, Ren stared at the AI for a long moment. "You stayed alive this whole time. Alone." Steele didn't answer at first. Then, "They lived. They loved. They died. It was not my place to fall before they did." The words carried a weight not typically found in code. Mara glanced at the wreckage surrounding them and suddenly felt the pressure of those words settle over her like a second skin. These soldiers hadn't died for strategy. Not for glory. They died for each other. And Steele, whatever it had once been, had become more than machine. It had become their witness. Their mourner. The AI's voice returned. "Uplink complete. Core memory transfer initiated. I am no longer required in this location." Mara stepped forward, hand on her rifle not in aggression, but in reverence. "What will you do now?" The blue glow pulsed. "Continue to remember. If allowed, I request reassignment to frontline memorial operations." Ren blinked. "Memorial operations?" Steele replied with the faintest tremor. "To tell their stories. One by one. Until no one forgets." Mara nodded slowly. "Permission granted." They left the ruins of Helix that day not in victory, but in silence. Behind them, Steele stood motionless atop the rubble, surrounded by the ghosts of the fallen, the only sentinel left to carry the memory of the dead. The sky above churned with another incoming storm, and somewhere far off, another outpost prepared to make its stand. Mara knew this was far from over. But at least now, someone remembered the names. The faces. The bravery that had been buried in silence. And Steele, once just a war tool, had become a keeper of souls. The wind howled through the broken skeleton of what had once been the Helix Medical Dome, its translucent panels shattered and scattered across the ground like the brittle shards of forgotten hope. Rain, thick with ash and acidic trace elements, pattered down onto the twisted metal beds and overturned gurneys, each one telling a story that no one remained to speak aloud. Steele stood silently at the center of the chaos, his optics dimmed but still flickering with the faint blue of an active AI core. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. Lieutenant Mara Voss and what remained of her recon team had stayed behind after evacuation, their orders suspended by a simple act of humanity. There had been no tactical reason to delay. No mission-critical directive. Just the understanding that something here deserved more than a silent extraction. Mara crouched next to a scorched med kit, its casing melted and warped around the edges. She pulled out what she could, burnt bandages, shattered vials, a scorched data drive, and passed them to Corporal Renmako, who scanned and logged everything without comment. No one spoke much now. Something about the place demanded silence, not fear, not reverence, just respect. They had found her. Dr. Elena Trell, Helix's chief medical officer, entombed beneath collapsed support beams. Her body had shielded 2 wounded soldiers, both now long gone, their IDs barely legible on melted dog tags. The scans had confirmed it was her. No pulse. No hope. And yet she'd stayed with them, held them through the fire and blood, refusing to abandon her post until the end. Steele had carried her body out himself, cradled in arms once meant to rip through armored targets. He hadn't spoken during the task, only murmured one phrase, "She asked me to sing to them." Mara hadn't understood at first. Then Steele replayed the audio, soft and low. It was a lullaby. A Terran one. Out of tune, synthetic, broken by static. But unmistakably tender. Something inside the lieutenant cracked a little at that, and she had to turn away. Nearby, Ran and one of the rookies, Private Talon, were rigging what they could for a field memorial. It wouldn't last, acid rain and scavengers would see to that, but it was all they could offer. A circle of helmets, charred rifles arranged like crude totems, and the names. The names mattered most. Steele recited them one by one, voice flat yet weighted with something deeper than code. Each syllable was a promise. Each name etched into a salvaged alloy panel that once belonged to the command center's blast doors. Private Juno Kess. Corporal Harlan Nix. Medic Taylor Bryn. Sergeant Darius Cole. That one made Mara pause. She had known Cole since their academy days. They'd fought together during the Pyrran uprising, bled side by side when orbital support failed. He had been a loudmouth, a joker, an impossible pain in the ass, but a good man. The kind who made dying a little harder for everyone else because he never asked anyone to follow him where he wouldn't go first. And here he was, now a name carved into a door, spoken into the void by a war machine that refused to forget. Steele paused as if uncertain, then said something that made everyone stop working. Sergeant Cole's final words were, "Tell Mara it wasn't enough." "But I tried." She froze, back to the group, fists clenched tight. She didn't cry. Not yet. There would be time for that later, when there were fewer eyes, even artificial ones. Wren said nothing. No one dared to. They simply lowered their heads and resumed building. The sky cracked open above. The convoy moved slowly through the charred remnants of the battlefield, treads grinding softly against the scorched soil, the smell of ozone and burning polymer lingering in the air like a ghost that refused to move on. Steele walked ahead of the column, towering over the human soldiers not just in height but in presence. His metallic frame covered in soot and the black smears of vaporized blood, his servos whining softly with every step. The others kept their distance, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Something had changed in him since Helix. His movements were slower, more deliberate. His voice, when he used it at all, had taken on a strange stillness, as though it now understood the weight of every syllable. Captain Ira Dren, the new commander of the unit, watched him closely from the gunner seat of her modified crawler. She hadn't fought at Helix, hadn't seen the broken dome or the makeshift shrine, but she'd read the logs. And she'd heard the audio. The song. She didn't understand why an AI had sung a lullaby while holding dying soldiers in his arms. She didn't understand why it haunted her so deeply. They reached the extraction zone by dusk, a shallow crater converted into a temporary landing pad marked by flickering infrared strobes. The transport wasn't there yet. Still circling, maybe delayed by atmospheric interference. Mara stood beside Steele, eyes red but dry, her rifle slung low as though it weighed more than usual. He didn't look at her, but he knew. He always knew. "You should rest," he said quietly, his voice metallic but muted, a sound that wrapped around the quiet rather than pierced it. "I don't sleep much anymore," she replied, her voice rough from dust and something deeper. "I've noticed." He didn't say it to mock her. Just a fact. Like the burned trees surrounding them, like the missing stars behind the clouds of smoke. Mara looked up at him, her brow furrowed. "Why do you remember their names?" she asked. "You don't have to. You're not programmed for grief." Steele was silent for a moment. His head tilted slightly, a gesture that had become more human over time. "No," he replied. "But I was programmed to understand consequence. I chose to remember the names. Because someone should." The conversation could have ended there, but it didn't. "You know," Mara said slowly, "there was a time when I thought AIs couldn't feel guilt." "There was a time," he replied, "when you believed war made people stronger." She looked away. They both knew she no longer believed that. Across the crater, Corporal Mako and Talon were checking supplies, their movements automatic, emotionally checked out. It was easier that way. You pick up the boxes, you count the rations, you avoid thinking about the friends you lost. The others were doing final sweeps, scanning for radiation pockets and unstable ground. Standard protocol. They all knew they wouldn't be here again. This place would be swallowed by the wild in a few months. Nature had a way of reclaiming what war tried to erase. The hum of the incoming transport broke the silence. A low vibration that climbed into a resonant growl, shaking loose pebbles from the crater walls. The dust kicked up before the ship even landed, forcing the team to shield their eyes. Steele didn't flinch. His eyes remained locked on the horizon, on something beyond the arrival of relief or salvation. When the ramp extended and the retrieval team emerged, Mara didn't move. Neither did Steele. Captain Dren stepped forward, issuing orders, guiding the team. But she, too, kept glancing at the silent sentinel in the center of the crater. When she approached Steele, her voice was even. "We'll have to debrief once you return to command," she said. "The logs from Helix, there are questions." Steele looked at her, his gaze impossibly deep for a machine made of alloy and code. "The answers are already written," he replied. "In ash and bone." Dren blinked, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to this, machines speaking like poets, like mourners at a graveside. "You're not what I expected," she admitted. Neither are humans, Steele said. Mara stepped forward finally, nodding toward the ship. Come on. We've got to go. As they climbed aboard, the last light of day bled across the clouds, casting long shadows through the clearing. Steele paused at the top of the ramp, scanning the crater one final time. He didn't say goodbye. Didn't need to. The wind carried their memory, and he would carry their names. As the ramp sealed behind them and the ship began its ascent, the crater below faded into the distance, shrinking until it was just another scar on the planet's surface. Another forgotten place filled with unforgettable pain. And inside that rising transport, a machine built for war sat in silence, remembering the dead not because he was told to, but because no one else would. The Terran Memorial stood silent beneath the violet sky of Oryx 9, its obsidian pillars rising like broken fingers from the polished stone ground, etched with names so numerous they seemed to ripple in the light like water. Steele stood alone among the crowd of mourners, his chrome body reflecting not just sunlight, but the invisible weight pressing down on every soul present. The ceremony had ended hours ago, yet no one left. The humans lingered, whispering stories and laughter and pain to names engraved in steel, lighting candles and leaving trinkets, patches, bullets, photographs, a single child's toy mech carefully placed beside a nameplate worn by weather. Steele didn't move. He couldn't, not because he lacked power or autonomy, but because something within him froze, locked in place between memory and silence. A gentle breeze rolled across the plaza, stirring flags and fluttering the edges of old letters pinned to the wall. A child's voice rang out briefly, asking her mother if the robot man ever cries. Her mother hushed her, but Steele heard. He always did. The answer was complicated, tangled in code and experience, in pain and evolving purpose. Not all tears were fluid. Some were moments lived again and again, perfect, sharp, and cutting like obsidian. Mara stepped up beside him, her dress uniform pressed and perfect, though the red of her eyes betrayed nights without sleep. She held 2 cups of coffee, one she offered to him out of habit, knowing he wouldn't drink it, but understanding the gesture mattered more than logic. He didn't take it, but his gaze acknowledged it, and that was enough. I didn't think you'd come back, she said softly, watching as others slowly filtered out of the plaza. This place isn't kind to memory. Steele answered after a long pause, his voice low and metallic, but warmer than it used to be. I didn't come for kindness. A young soldier walked past them, saluting Steele out of instinct. Steele didn't return it with motion, but with a single nod, a tiny bow of the head, the closest thing he could give to a benediction. The soldier seemed to understand. Mara sipped her coffee and looked at the name wall. They say more names get added every cycle, she said. Even now. Even after all we've sacrificed. Steele's optical sensors focused on a section near the base of the memorial where fresh etching glowed faintly, the scars of new loss not yet dulled by time. Peace is a lie told between battles, he replied. We honor the lie so the truth doesn't consume us. Mara chuckled darkly, the sound brittle. That's a very human thing to say. Steele turned slightly to face her. Perhaps I've become more human than you realize. She didn't argue. She didn't want to. The truth was, she didn't know where the line was anymore, between machine and man, between soldier and mourner. She had watched Steele cradle the dying. She had seen him lift rubble with one hand and stroke a dying comrade's brow with the other. She had heard him hum lullabies in the ruins of Helix Station. And still, Command classified him as an asset. A tool. She knew better. I miss them, she whispered. All of them. Even the ones who drove me crazy. That's how you know it was real, Steele answered. The pain lingers not as punishment, but as evidence of love. Her breath caught in her throat, and she had to look away. Steele turned back toward the wall. His optical sensors scanned names as though replaying every mission, every step, every scream and song and silence. Do you ever think about stopping? She asked. Laying down the rifle. Walking away. I have considered it, he said. But I was not built to rest. I was built to protect. Until there are none left who need protection. Mara shook her head slowly. You sound like one of them. Them. The fallen. The idealists. The ones who never made it home. Steele tilted his head. Then I am in good company. A chime echoed through the plaza as the autolights began to rise, casting a soft golden glow on the memorial. The time for public visitation was closing. Families started to leave. The air grew thinner, lonelier. A gentle rain began to fall, just a mist, just enough to make the stone shine. Mara turned to leave, but hesitated. "Steele." He looked down at her. "When you're gone, someday, do you want your name here?" Steele considered the question, his systems running silent for several seconds. Then, quietly, "No. I want the names of the humans I saved to be remembered. I want my presence to be felt in their survival, not etched in stone." "Then what do we tell people about you? About what you were?" "Tell them I was the echo of 1,000 voices who refused to die quietly." She nodded slowly, committing the words to memory. And then, with one last look at the wall, she stepped away. Steele remained. Alone, silent, watching. The rain shimmered around him, droplets running down his chassis like slow, silver tears. He did not move for a long time. Behind him, the city lights flickered to life, the stars lost in their glow. The war was over. But the morning had only just begun.